Architecture and adaptation was a project across the University of Michigan, the University of Hong Kong, and the University of Indonesia, who wanted to ask about adaptation. Adaptation as the idea of the evolution of the discipline, but then also within a broader sense of settlement and with actually a cultural question. So both a disciplinary question and a cultural question. So the three main obstacles that we saw in the discipline that would prevent adaptation were a very cynical conception of the environment, like a green roof, then, or even net zero building, a very limited scope of energetics. On the environment question, we introduce in the book the idea of slow violence and the relationship of violence and environmental violence as a question for architecture. In Jakarta, that means every time you build a tower, you increase the rate of subsidence in the city because you're taking the groundwater out of the delta and increasing the speed of subsidence. So that is a sort of subterranean political form of environmental violence that architecture is participating in. At the same time, on the environmental side, we didn't want to have a nostalgia for the kampong, or that it's some sort of heritage project of everyone should live on the ground in bamboo, but at the same time recognizing the value of some of those things. One of the ideas being, in that regard, a sort of incrementality, a mentality of moving in small but successful movements rather than through loans or through big projects. So how the kampong facilitates incrementality as a ecology of practices. Maybe the discourse of development, which is accepted in architecture as just a generic good, is worth questioning. What would architecture be if its client was not affluent clientele, but the rest of the world? And so, what kind of research would that require, and what kind of community organizing and institutional ethnography and these kinds of things? Autonomy was seen as insulating architecture or isolating architecture from social concerns. So autonomy is an architectural idea. It's about the discipline not having to respond to the world. We bring up the quote from Foucault in this very important passage for us, that no space or structure guarantees liberation, because liberation is a practice, not a structure. The other trajectories of autonomy, which are about self-determination, mutual aid, voluntary association, opposition to domination, opposition to coercion whether by market or by state, and a much more anarchist line of autonomy. How would that then feed in to adaptation practices that can be facilitated, emboldened, motivated by design?